Okay, so reminders. I've delayed quiz 5 till next time. That'll be on Tuesday. I'm asking that papers, that exercise 2 be turned in then as well, but there's no penalty for turning it in the Tuesday following Thanksgiving. The only problem is you're not going to know your grade before the final. So for your own good, so that you can know where you stand in general, and especially if you're anybody who's thinking about wanting to skip the final, it's really a good idea to get those papers in before we go on Thanksgiving break. Okay, and that's a week from next Tuesday. All right, that's what's coming up. Any questions about any of that stuff? Remember, final exam in this class. We've got next week is Thanksgiving. The week after that is the last week of classes, and the third week after that is the week of final exams. And your final, unfortunately, is at 7:15 in the morning. Yeah, I know. I have to be here too. It's no more fun for me than for you. However, I do have an open door policy. So if you want to take your final at any of the other scheduled times during that week where I have finals scheduled, you're welcome to do so. So here are the other times. You can do it on Tuesday morning at 9:25 in this room. You can do it at 11:35 on Tuesday in room 525, 2 doors down. Or you can do it on 1:45 on Wednesday in room 370, but that's on the other side of campus, in a little lecture hall. Okay.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. Tuesday, December 8th, 9:25 in this room. Tuesday, December 8th, 11:35 in room 525. Wednesday, 1:45 in room 370. 370. If you go to any of those other times besides this one, please make sure that you remind me that you're in this class. And that's especially important if you happen to go to the Tuesday at 11:35 class. Make sure on that one, you really got to tell me that you're in the intro 8 o'clock, because you will not like the final exam you get, because it's a very different class. Unless you know a lot about adverse selection and the role of the Federal Reserve in managing the monetary supply, you will not do well in that test. Okay, so any questions about that stuff? Questions about that? Okay, cool. All right, let's review. Now, let me see how far I get. Please stop me in exactly an hour. Yell, scream, throw things at me, so don't forget, again, to do the review for the quiz. So exactly at 9:05 we'll stop. But let me go back now and do a brief review of the lecture material that will be on quiz number 5. So it will go back as far, I'm using your lecture notes here, so that you can see the main points. It'll go back as far as anything connected to Goffman. So go back to Goffman, that means dramaturgy, total institution. Then anything connected to small group. We'll talk about leadership, instrumental versus expressive. Talk about size, simile, dyad, triad. The use of ritual to compensate for that tendency. Conformity in groups. The Ash experiment, the Milgram experiment, the Zimbardo experiment. And competition between groups, that's the Sharif experiment. And then finally, in-group versus out-group. Then bureaucracy. Favor 1, the overview, efficient but soulless, the iron cage. Favor 2, the more specifics, division of labor, an extensive division of labor in a large organization. A lot of rules, particularly written ones. Hierarchy of authority. Someone gives orders, someone takes it. Impersonality of work relations, or depersonalization, removing human emotion from bureaucracy. Positions based on ability. Then all of that adds up to a metaphor of bureaucracy being kind of a human machine. You cannot fully turn people into pieces of machinery. There's where the informal side of bureaucracy comes in, the need to motivate human beings. Two pieces of evidence discussed, the Hawthorne study and Japan. Then sources of inefficiency in bureaucracy. Ritualism, where people get obsessed with the rules to the detriment of the goals. Michel's iron law of oligarchy. Bureaucracies are oligarchies, dictatorships. That usually is efficient, but if the guy on top's interests conflict with what's good for the organization, the guy on top is going for what's good for him or her. The Peter principle, rise to level of incompetence, Parkinson's law, work expands the field of time made available for. Those last two are less important than the first two and really relate largely to government. Then we started talking about stratification, economic inequality, its impact on life chances. Did a list of the kind of things associated with inequality. What does it affect about your life? Everything. Absolutely everything. How long you live, your chances of having a stable relationship, ability to travel, the kind of food you eat. It just goes down the line. Access to education, view of self, whether you are psychologically well adjusted or not, at odds of finding almost any kind of disease. It's just, the list is almost endless. Those factors are called life chances. The chances your life will be affected, poorly or well, by how much money you have. Then we talked about the difference between wealth versus income. Income, monetary resources you get largely by work and effort. Wealth, monetary resources you get largely by way of ownership. Both are unequally distributed, but wealth is more unequally distributed than income. Okay. That's pretty much where we left off last time, right? Anybody need any of that stuff clarified? All of that stuff is going to be on quiz number 5. And however far I get in lecture today. But I can guarantee the stuff I just covered will be on quiz 5. Yeah?
Can you go over Michel's iron law?
Sure. Robert Michels was a student of Max Weber. He's one of the first people to notice that what Weber believes was efficient could, in some circumstances, become inefficient. Michels went along with Weber's notion of the importance of hierarchy in bureaucracy and recognized that that is, by definition, a dictatorship. And the term used for a dictatorship is oligarchy. If democracy is ruled by the many, oligarchy is ruled by the few. And Michel says, look, human nature says you get power and authority on top. Your first and primary desire is not to help your company, not to make your bureaucracy more efficient. It is to stay on top and get the benefits from that. And so if it ever comes to a choice between what's good for you personally and what's good for your organization, there's a tendency for these guys on top to go with what's good for them personally. The example I used in class was the financial meltdown of 2008, where banks nearly brought a depression on the economy, made some of the worst decisions in banking history, bailed out to the tune of trillions of dollars. They took that public money, tax dollars, and gave themselves bonuses, which was bad for the company, bad for the country, but good, obviously, for them. Okay. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other reviews? Yeah.
Can you scroll up?
Okay.
It's like the first.
It goes back as far as Goffman. Keep going.
Yeah.
Right there.
Can you go over that real quick?
Which Goffman?
Yeah.
Okay. Irving Goffman is the most important modern interactional sociologist. He devised a way of thinking about interaction. He provided a metaphor to structure our thinking about it. He called it the dramaturgical metaphor. He believed in Shakespeare, that all the world's a stage. And by that he meant Interaction is best thought of as a drama. Look, we play roles. We have scripts we follow. Our clothing is no more than costumes. Our homes and cars are props for the presentation of self. We manage a self. We act. We have a front stage. That's very formal roles when you're at work. There's a backstage with family and friends, but Goffin still believes we're acting. That stuff together, our roles, our scripts, our props, our costumes, are our interactional self. Goffin agrees with you folks. You're going to spend a lot of the rest of your life working hard to get the fancy house, the cool car, the right kind of clothes. Well, Goffin takes that seriously and says that's part of ourselves. That's the dramaturgical metaphor. All right, follow that?
Yeah.
Okay. Next, he uses that to explain some very disturbing places, like mental hospitals and prisons. Both of those share the same structure. They are what are called total institutions. A total institution is one in which all aspects of your interactional self is learned. All the roles and scripts and costumes and blah, blah, blah. You're inside the institution 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you cannot leave. It's got you. And it is changing virtually everything about what I just described. The roles, the scripts, the costumes, all that stuff. You're wearing uniforms. You're constantly being observed. You're told when to eat, when to go to the bathroom, when to go to bed, when to get up. All that totally managed by the institution. And Goffin found it very disturbing that an institution like an asylum, a mental hospital, designed to help cure and aid suffering people, is structured exactly like an institution designed to punish and inflict suffering. Okay, is that good enough?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other reviews? Yeah.
What was the other experiment besides the Hawthorne?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
What was the other experiment besides the Hawthorne experiment?
Well, there's a whole bunch. There's a whole bunch of experiments in this discussion. In terms of actual experiments, there's the Ash experiment, the Milgram experiment, the Zimbardo experiment, and the Sharif experiment. So there's a whole bunch of them. Is that all you needed to know?
Yes.
Okay. Now, names also included Zimmel, spelled with an S, Michelle's, Peter, Parkinson. A lot of names. Okay, any other more in-depth reviews? This is basically a review for the quiz, so we got getting most of this out of the way. Yeah, Juan.
Quick question, the Ash credit paper is due by next Tuesday. This upcoming Tuesday.
It's not due, but I've been requesting it. It was originally due on Tuesday, but I'm not taking any points for being late after Thanksgiving, but I still want it. It's to your best interest to get it in, because I'll promise to have it graded with everything up to stuff. You'll take that quiz number 5 on Tuesday, you turn that paper in. I promise to have all that graded and back to you by the time you come back, and therefore you'll know exactly where you stand in class, how many points you need to get on the final if you're going to take it, or if you can skip it. So it's not formally due anymore on that Tuesday, but it's really a good idea to get it in. Okay. Any other questions besides this stuff?